So we're here. You probably have seen 17 question videos in the same outfit for today because it was a video day.
Yeah.
But Pastor Jay just started talking about pride and the spirit of pride. This is something that I have dealt with. I would imagine that every person who has the same clay makeup as Adam has had to deal with this.
Yeah.
So I don't think anyone's exempt. Maybe there's more powerful iniquities in a bloodline or whatever, but every one of us have had to deal with pride, and I do too. And so but as we were talking about it, Pastor Jay shed some light on it, and if you deal with this spirit, you know you do. It especially when you're really truly trying to pursue Jesus, it will confront and conflict and butt heads, and you can't relate to people, you can't connect with people. You love people, but you compete with people, and you love them, but you're jealous, and there's all these various emotions because it's a whirlwind of the wrong thing.
Right.
But Pastor Jay just said something that I think if you are dealing with this may set you free. And so just give it a listen, take time on it, and let this really settle into your spirit. And if you are dealing with pride, take this moment and say, okay, hold on. I open up my heart to this word, and I open up my soul, and so we can move forward in humility.
Yeah. You know, when you think about pride, you said it. When you mention the name Adam, Adam takes us back to the beginning, which we call the original intent. And from the fall from the garden, Adam and Eve walked in a sense of pride because they hid themselves. Pride will always cause you to hide yourself. It will cause you to say that I'm shy when you're not shy, but it will cause you to want to be not around people because it realizes that it's easily identified.
Wow.
And so that's what Adam and Eve did. They hid themselves, and then they told themselves they were naked, and God said, who told you were naked? Pride will always tell you you are exposed when you're never exposed.
Wow.
And so understanding that pride is just a trap that the enemy uses to stop us, to hinder us, and even to break relationship with God. It was the pride of Satan that actually went after the relationship God had with Adam. God visited Adam and Eve every day in the garden, but Satan was jealous, and he used the seed of pride because he said, had God said? And so pride is something that is said and not said. And so a lot of times we don't realize the enemy thrives on the secrecy. Pride is increased in our lives because of secrecy. And what has become a hush is really a level of pride.
Wow.
For example, in our families, we don't tell everything that goes on in the family because of pride. Have you ever heard what goes on in this house stays in this house? And really, it's a seedbed for pride, because what happens is, yes, there is secrecy. There are things that you keep in a family. You don't go home and go to school and tell everybody what goes on in your house unless it's dangerous. But it's that mentality that it confines and it incorporates. In other words, it confines whatever that thing, that pride is. It could be,
keeps it there.
Yeah, it holds it. It's called solitary confinement.
Yeah.
So it holds it in place so that it never leaves the bloodline.
Wow.
It never leaves the family. It never leaves the mind. And so a lot of times we go through life, and then pride affects marriages. It affects relationships. It affects ministry. It affects school. There are people that are prideful in school, and they may think that they're humble, but they're really pride. They're walking in a level of pride to say, I'm not like this person, I'm not like that person. But you know, when you look at pride is just a source that the enemy uses to stop what God really wants to liberate in our life.
Right.
If you think about it, who Jesus set free, I always say this, he was naked and unashamed on the cross.
Yeah.
And why was he naked and unashamed? Because he was showing that he was not too proud to take on human flesh.
Right.
Here it is, a king who took off his earthly authority, who took off his heavenly authority and put on a heavenly garment, an earthly garment. And he put this garment on because he was not walking in the pride of life.
Right.
What he was walking in, the humility of honoring the Father. And so a lot of times, pride, being a person with pride in your heart and in your mind will limit you from really being transparent, honest, and frankly, walking in a place of righteousness.
Right.
You can't truly have pride in your heart and be a righteous person.
Right.
Because righteousness deals with the spirit of pride. It deals with the mindset of pride.
Right.
And so, yeah, just the spirit of pride is really evident in a lot of our lives. Really, all of us.
Yeah.
We come from a culture of being prideful.
Yeah.
We come from a culture that we're in a culture that wants to be competitive.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times you may not be good at something, or you may not be the best at something, but then pride would say, I'm not going to let someone know I don't have that capacity. Even as a preacher, I've got to know that there are some things I'm good at and I'm not good at.
Right.
I may not be good at raising the dead, right?
Right.
But I've got to know my vein.
Right.
I've got to know my capacity, and I've got to know my call.
Right.
And so sometimes we've got to take a step back and say, I'm not going to be prideful about that. And I need to be able to tell someone, that's not my gift.
Right.
And so if you're dealing with something, if you have pride from family issues, relationships. Let me give you a point. Can I give you a point, right?
Get your pens out.
So it's like marriage, right? So this is the thing about marriage. It is willing to be humble and submit to each other.
Right.
And so being a believer, or being a Christian, or being in church says true humility and humbleness is willing to be honest and willing to serve each other. Not just your spouse, but everybody that you come in contact with. That's what Jesus taught us. He did not give pride room in his life. Pride says, do you know who I am?
Wow.
I'm older than you. And that's why Jesus said, this is what shows you that Jesus was not prideful. He said, suffer not the little children.
Right.
He was willing to bounce the children on his knee.
Right.
He was willing to be humble with the children and share with the children. And he realized it was a child's lunch,
right,
that was able to feed 5,000. And so he wasn't saying, do you know who I am? I'm Jesus of Nazareth.
Right.
Do you know who I am? I'm the Son of God. He said, who do you say I am?
Right.
And so that distinguished the level of pride in his life. And he said, wait a minute, I'm nobody.
Right.
I'm here about the Father's business. And so if you're going to overcome pride, I'm going to give you 3 things. How to overcome pride, right? Number 1, to overcome pride, you've got to be truthful with yourself.
Right.
You've got to tell yourself, I have pride issues. I have a pride. I'm being proudful. I have pride in my life. I have pride in my family. And a lot of people won't acknowledge that. What that does is that begins to break any long-term generational curse of being prideful.
Right.
Is it easy? No. It may take you years to continue to tell yourself, I struggle with pride. And I think that how you walk in humility is continually saying, I am not a prideful person.
Right.
I am a person that is transparent and open. Number 2, how do you overcome pride? Oh, you're going to love this one. It is very simple. It is very simple. Are you ready? Are you ready? Drum roll. Okay. Number 2, to overcome pride, you've got to lay yourself down.
Right.
Jesus taught us dying to yourself. What does that mean? In other words, giving up real rights.
Right.
Where you have rights, you begin to remove those rights. Removing the right that you have to correct somebody. Removing the right you have, because what happens is when you remove your rights, you take on his rights.
Right.
And his right will begin to open you up to everything. A lot of time, being prideful, you say, I have a right to this.
Wow.
You don't know what they did to me. You don't know how they hurt me. Or you don't know what I went through. You might have been touched or violated. You don't understand. And so what happens, we use that as a right. So when you die to your rights, now you say, I don't have the right to retaliate. I don't have the right to correct them or to rebuke them or to kill them. And we live in a culture where we take our rights, and those rights are really the root of pride.
Right.
All right, number 3. You ready? So number 1 is what? Let's reflect. Number 1 is what? You remember?
Be truthful with yourself.
Be truthful with yourself. Honesty. Number 2 is what?
That one's on you.
Number 2.
Lay yourself down.
Lay yourself down.
Hello.
Right?
Sorry, nephew.
Number 2, lay yourself down. And then number 3, do I wait for Jade? I didn't say number 3. No. So for number 3, Jade is back. So for number 3, number 3 is, okay. So we said number 1.
I made you lose it.
Yes. Number 1.
Truthful.
Be truthful.
Lay down.
Number 2, lay yourself down. And number 3 is accountability.
Yes.
Accountability, you said something earlier in that, because it's accountability. The accountability is your mirror.
Right.
Accountability, when you go to the doctor, you go to the doctor for a physical. The doctor has some steps that he's going to take you through to reveal your health level.
Right.
It's impossible for you to look at yourself and help yourself through a level of pride. The best person to identify the pride in my life is the one I'm accountable to.
Right.
My wife. My wife see more of my shortcomings and see where I'm really prideful at. And a lot of times, the pride that we see in ourselves is minimized.
Right.
We can only see a little bit.
Right.
Because we won't deal with the big pride.
Right.
We deal with the little pride. And we deal with the pride that we're willing to handle.
Yeah.
But when you're accountable, they're going to see everything about you. And so accountability reveals the totality of your pride, which helps deal with the root.